It's the best day ever, folks, because yesterday we had ourselves a tweet made by Frank Seravalli that kind of goes out there and warms my soul. Let's take a look at what he said at 6:01 p.m. February 23rd, 2023. Moving money will be incredibly important over the next 8 days. Two teams have recently told GMs they are willing to act as third-party brokers. The Canucks and the Habs. We already know the Wild are in the game along with the usual suspects, the Coyotes, the Blackhawks, the Ducks, etc. And this is a very simple tweet, and I'm making an entire video about it. Why is that? Well, because when it comes to the teams mentioned at the bottom, Arizona, Chicago, Minnesota, what these teams have done so far throughout the past few weeks in the trades they have made has been pretty good for their long-term futures. The Arizona Coyotes took on Shea Weber's contract, and in order to do that, they ended up getting themselves an extra draft pick. Cool. You had yourselves the Minnesota Wild. They got involved in the Ryan O'Reilly trade, Toronto-St. Louis. They also got involved in the trade yesterday between the Boston Bruins and the Washington Capitals, the Garnet Hathaway and Dmitry Orlov trade. There was a little bit of salary that the Wild ended up retaining in both of these deals, and they got compensated for it handsomely. Okay, maybe not handsomely. It was like 5th-round picks, 4th-round picks, stuff like that. It's not really too important, but draft picks are draft picks at the end of the day. And the big thing that a lot of people have to understand about the NHL draft, especially towards the mid-rounds, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round even, is that it's never really about just the quality. If any of these guys in the pick 60 to 210 range were guaranteed superstar studs, then they would have been taken a lot earlier, wouldn't you think? The thing with the NHL draft is that you want as many swings of the bat as possible. You want as many shots on goal because one of those just has to work out and all of a sudden you're golden. You just need one home run. You just need one goal. You miss 100% of the shots. You don't take Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott, and that's ultimately what the Wild have been doing a very good job at accomplishing the past little while here. Multiple draft picks, using the cap space they have to help other teams facilitate trades by retaining 25% of players' salaries. It's a pretty good business. Now, sure, there are limited salary retention spots that NHL teams do have, and that would have to be considered, but you do have, for the Vancouver Canucks case, for example, Emilie Castonguay, an agent, or a former agent, who knows what she's doing when it comes to maneuvering the cap. She has signed a bunch of big-name talents there, hockey-playing deals, and she's a very smart person to have in that job. You have yourselves, of course, two teams in Vancouver and Montreal that hadn't really done too much of this retaining salary, getting picks in exchange type of ordeal. Really, dare I even say, at all. I mean, sure, there might be some stuff happening in the 90s or whatever that I might not be aware of since I wasn't born back then, but like, from recent memory, taking a look at how the NHL has sort of gravitated towards bottom feeder teams using their extra cap space as capital for other teams that are looking to make playoff acquisitions, Montreal and Vancouver have never really been involved in that in the slightest. Now, I know what you're saying. For Montreal, there could be a few more, let's just say, obstacles in the way, not only because you have so many guys who are injured and on the LTIR, but because you have other big-name players that, I say big-name players as in you know the names, not because they're talented players, but because you know them. You got guys like Mike Hoffman, for example. You have other players like Dadonov that are making a pretty significant amount of money and are not guaranteed to being traded. Now, if you trade away these guys, then sure, that frees up the money to help you make some facilitating trades with the Maple Leafs or the Lightning or the Bruins or whatever, and you can retain salary and use your cap space to get you more assets. But so far, at the time of recording this audio, the Habs have not made any trades with Mike Hoffman, for example. They're still sort of sitting on that, trying to unload him, and it just hasn't really been working. Should the Canadiens go out there and accomplish that, though, I have no doubt in my mind that Kent Hughes is smart enough to pull off some sort of a move that allows the Canadiens to get the most out of their cap space. Maybe take on a bad contract and get another pick and use that pick to draft a pretty good player in the mid-rounds. You've had some pretty good slam dunks for the Canadiens the past little while here. Obviously, the big ones being Cole Caulfield at 15, but that's not even really a mid-round pick. You have Lane Hudson that we have been talking about all season. You have Sean Farrell from a prior year that has been phenomenal. There are so many guys in the Canadian system that have been taken with those late round picks that if you're acknowledging from a Montreal Canadiens fan point of view, you have to go out there and say, yeah, no, this has worked for us in the past. Just getting as many picks and mid-round selections as we can because it's all about shots on goal at this game. Now, when it comes to Vancouver, this is the completely different scenario here because Montreal has sort of been bad for a while. Vancouver was pretty okay last season. All things considered, sure, they were still bad, but not as bad as they've been performing this season after they started out the year blowing all those multi-goal leads and being dead last in the NHL. The Vancouver Canucks are still a pretty bad team when it comes to their structural makeup and the on-ice results. You're not seeing too many wins, you're still seeing a few fumbles here and there. Sure, they can come back and win games in overtime, or they can come back and tie games and lose in a shootout like they did to Nashville and St. Louis recently, but this team ain't good, and everybody kind of knows that. They're probably going to be one of the, let's say, mid-tier contenders for Connor Bedard when everything is said and done. At least, that's unless Elias Pettersson has something to say about that. But the Vancouver Canucks, with all of their guys that they had placed onto the LTIR recently, had, of course, Tanner Pearson joining the likes of Tucker Poolman, Furland, and Ilya Mikheyev. You had Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Demko, who have been moved to the IR. Travis Dermott is there, too. There are millions and millions of dollars that the Vancouver Canucks have at their disposal on the LTIR. Now, I did have a lot of people on my Twitter feed kind of bringing up the idea as to whether or not it would be too smart for Vancouver to be making these types of trades like Minnesota has been the past little while here, mostly because to the retention limit that teams have. There have been a few guys on Vancouver, like Brock Besser, for example, whose value is at an all-time low that if you were to trade this guy away, you probably would have to retain a little bit of money on that 6.65 AAV. Meaning that kind of limits how many other guys from other teams in a 3-team trade you would be able to hold salary on too. But we're just going to have to wait and see if there is a team that takes on Besser for like only a third with no salary retained or whatever, because even though he's making 6.65, I don't really think he's that caliber of a player to be making that much. We'll see where the Vancouver Canucks go with this entire cap shenanigans business heading into the next few days. The trade deadline is approaching us, folks. There is a limited amount of time before everything comes to an end, and the trades eat up our timeline. If you're a fan of the Montreal Canadiens, what are your thoughts on Kent Hughes potentially exploring trades like these? If you're a fan of the Canucks, then thoughts on Alvin and whether or not he's got it out for his job to do this as well. I could totally understand that there are some on both sides that are a little bit on the fence. I know for Canucks fans, it's been a lot more of a just general positive reception, since most Canucks fans sort of believe that, hey, this team is bad, like, get picks. Get draft picks, please. You did that last year for Hamonic and Tyler Mott. Please use your extra space now to get more draft picks today, because 2023 is a pretty good draft. For Montreal, you could say there's a little bit of skepticism about the makeup of the team structure cap-wise, which is sort of limiting the idea as to whether or not this is actually possible, but all it takes is a Mike Hoffman trade, and then all of a sudden you're good. Like, you can start making trades like this a little bit more to retain salary and help other teams make their transactions, and getting some good draft picks in the mid-rounds in return. So, thoughts in the comment section below if you're a Canucks fan and or a Canadiens fan. What are your opinions on them joining the sweepstakes of teams that are so far down there at the bottom of the standings that you're just going to see them make trades for random guys? Holding on to salary, 25% salary retained, so playoff contenders can get these guys at only 25%, because you'd normally have the 50 retained by the original team and then the 25 retained by the other team, like Vancouver or Montreal. Thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.